Oh, death of the Syrian king. Then Elisha went to Damascus at a time when the son of Hadad, the king of Syria, was sick. And they brought word to him, saying, the man of God is here. And the king said to Hazael, take in your hand a present and go to meet the man of God, and inquire of the Lord by him, asking, shall I recover from this disease? So Hazael went to meet him. In his hand he took a present plus all the good things of Damascus, 40 camel loads, and he came and he stood before him and said, your son, the king of Syria, the son of Hadad, sent me to ask you whether he would recover from this disease. So Elisha said to him, go tell him, you shall live. However, the Lord made known to me that he will die by being put to death. The man of God wept and sat there until he was ashamed. Then he stood up in the presence of Hazael. At this, Hazael said, why does my Lord weep? He answered, because I know the evil you will do to the sons of Israel. You will utterly destroy their strongholds with fire, and you will kill their young men with the sword. You will dash their children and rip open their pregnant women. Then Hazael said, what is your servant that I should do such a thing? A dead dog? Elisha answered, the Lord has shown me that you will become king over Syria. Then he departed from Elisha and came to his Lord, who said to him, what did Elisha say to you? And he answered, he told me, you will live. But on the next day Hazael took a thick cloth and dipped it in water and spread it over the face of the king, the son of Hadad, and he died. Hazael reigned in his place. Jehoram is king of Judah. Now, in the 5th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, Joram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, began to reign. He was 32 years old, and he became king, and he ruled for 8 years in Jerusalem. And he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, just as the house of Ahab had done. For the daughter of Ahab was his wife, and he did evil in the eyes of the Lord. Yet the Lord would not destroy Judah for the sake of his servant David, as he promised to give a lamp to him and his sons forever. In his days, Edom revolted against Judah's authority and made a king over themselves. So Joram went to Seir with all his chariots, and it came to be, after he raised his troops, he struck Edom and the captains of the chariots who had encircled him. The people fled to their tents. Even so, Edom revolted from being subordinate to the authority of Judah to this day. At the same time, Libnah revolted as well. Behold, the rest of the acts of Joram, and everything he did, are these not written in the book of Chronicles of the kings of Judah? So Joram rested with his fathers, and was buried with his fathers in the city of David his father. Then Ahaziah his son reigned in his place. Ahaziah is king of Judah. In the 12th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, began to reign. Ahaziah was 22 years old when he became king, and he ruled for 1 year in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Athaliah, the granddaughter of Omri, king of Israel. And he walked in the way of the house of Ahab, and did evil in the eyes of the Lord, like the house of Ahab. Now he went with Joram, the son of Ahab, to war against Hazael, king of Syria, at Ramoth Gilead. And the Syrians wounded Joram. Then King Joram went back to Jezreel to recover from the wounds of the Syrians inflicted on him at Ramah, where he fought against Hazael, king of Syria. And Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, went down to see Joram, son of Ahab, in Jezreel. because he was sick. Jehu is king of Israel. Then Elisha the prophet called one of the sons of the prophets and said to him, "Prepare yourself. Take this flask of oil in your hand and go to Ramoth Gilead. Now, when you arrive at that place, look there for Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, and go in and awaken him from among his brethren, and take him the innermost chamber. Then take the flask of oil, pour it on his head, and say, 'Thus says the Lord, I have anointed you king over Israel.' Then open the door and flee, and do not delay." So the young man, the prophet, went to Ramoth Gilead. When he arrived where the captains of the army were sitting, he said, "I have a message for you, O Captain." Jehu said, "For which one of us?" And he said, "For you, O Captain." Then he arose and went into the house. And he poured the oil on his head and said to him, "Thus says the Lord God of Israel, I have anointed you king over the people of the Lord, over Israel. You shall destroy the house of Ahab, your master, that I may avenge the blood of my servants, the prophets, and the blood of all the servants of the Lord at the hand of Jezebel, and by the hand of all the house of Ahab. And you shall cut off from the house of Ahab every male held captive, those looked after, and those in solitary confinement. Then I will deliver the house of Ahab, like the house of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha, the son of Ahijah. The dogs shall eat Jezebel on the plot of ground at Jezreel, and there shall be no one to bury her." And he opened the door and fled. Then Jehu came out to the servants of his master, and they said to him, "Peace to you. Why did this possessed man come to you?" And he said to them, "You know the man and his babble." And they said, "Liar, now you tell us." And Jehu said to them, "Thus and thus he spoke to me, saying, 'Thus says the Lord, I anointed you king over Israel.'" When they heard this, they hastened to take their garments and to place them beneath him on the top of the stairs. And they blew trumpets, saying, "Jehu is king." Israel's king Joram is killed. So Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, conspired against Joram. And Joram was defending Ramoth Gilead, he and all Israel, against Hazael, king of Syria, and the king of Joram had returned to Jezreel to recover from the wounds the Syrians had inflicted on him. When he fought with Hazael, king of Syria, Jehu said, "If your heart is with me, let no one leave or escape from the city, and go tell it in Jezreel." So Jehu rode ahead and came down to Jezreel, for Joram, king of Israel, was being restored to health in Jezreel from the arrow wounds the Syrians inflicted on him with the bow in Ramoth, in the battle with Hazael, king of Syria, for he was powerful and a man of strength. And Ahaziah, king of Judah, came down to see Joram. Now a watchman went up to the tower in Jezreel and saw Jehu's dust as he came, and said, "I see dust." And Joram said, "Get a horseman and send him to meet them. Let him say, 'It is a time for peace.'" So the horseman went to meet him and said, "Thus says the king, let there be peace." And Jehu said, "What do you have to do with peace? Turn around and follow me." So the watchman reported, "The messenger went to them, but is not coming back." Then he sent out for a second horseman, who came to them and said, "Thus says the king, it is time for peace." And said, it is time for peace. And Jehu answered, "What do you have to do with peace? Turn around and follow me." So the watchman reported, saying, "He went up to them and is not coming back." And he brought Jehu, the son of Nimshi, for he was in a frenzy. Then Joram exclaimed, "Make ready, harness a chariot." Then Joram, king of Israel, and Ahaziah, said, king of Judah, went out, each in his chariot, for a meeting with Jehu. They found him on the property of Naboth the Jezreelite. Now it happened when Joram saw Jehu. He said, Jehu, let there be a time for peace. And he answered, now can there be a time for peace? The sexual immorality of Jezebel, your mother, and her sorceries are still many. Then Joram turned the reins in his hand to flee and said to Ahaziah, this is treachery, Ahaziah. But Jehu drew back on his bow fully and shot Joram with an arrow. Between his shoulders, the arrow came out through his heart, and he buckled at his knees. Then Jehu said to Bidkar, his officer, cast him into the portion of the field of Naboth the Jezreelite. For I remember when you and I were mounting onto a pair of chariots behind Ahab, Joram's father, and the Lord took upon himself this promise against Ahab, saying, yesterday, says the Lord, I surely saw the blood of Naboth and the blood of his sons. I will recompense to him in the same portion. Therefore, now pick him up and cast him into the portion of the ground according to the word of the Lord. Notes from the previous page. 8:1-6. Following the warning of the Lord through Elisha, the Shunammite woman and her household were not only protected from danger, but their place was kept inactive for 7 years. This passage may not be in chronological order, for Gehazi had been stricken with leprosy earlier, 527. 8:11. As did his prophets, the Lord himself wept tears over the lost condition of his people. Luke 19:41. 8:12-19. Hazael freely wills to fulfill Elisha's prophecy because his heart is evil. But God will use this evil for good by oppressing Israel to curb their sins, so they might not completely destroy themselves. 13:22. 9:1-3. Jehu is made king over Israel to cleanse the land and to prepare it for restoration. He will avenge God's prophets and righteous Naboth, kill the evil kings of Judah and Israel, fulfill Elijah's prophecy against Jezebel. See 3 Kings 20:23 and Ahab 10:17. See 3 Kingdoms and 20:21 and destroy Baal from Israel 10:28.